Welcome to Advanced TV Herstory, a podcast dedicated to bringing you the best moments in television or television storytelling that involve women. This podcast looks at great performances or women who pioneered the industry, or we've been known to go behind the scenes to better understand how the women's movement affected that which we saw on the tube. Knowledge is power. We know that there are excellent women in the field today to assume roles behind the camera and in front of it, and the more we know, the more we can demand parity in representation and pay. Advanced TV Herstory hopes you'll be part of the change so that the point of view of women is seen, heard, and understood in the present tense. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams. TV series that stretch out over many seasons often include holiday episodes. Sometimes producers avoid them, and that might be a good thing. In this installment of Advanced TV Herstory, we're going to review a holiday episode you very well may have never heard of. I selected it for this year's holiday theme for its context in American history, the story behind its development, and of course, the role two women played in ensuring this important message was well delivered. The show is Bewitched. Yes, like a Technicolor time capsule, the sweetheart show of syndication Bewitched, starring Elizabeth Montgomery, produced a holiday episode in 1970 that tells a story not so much of Christmas, but of the idea that in America, children, at least at that time, didn't see division in differences. First, a bit about Bewitched. It aired for 8 seasons, from 1964 to 1972. Think about what a changing landscape America was at that point. The end of the baby boom was in diapers when it began. It lasted clear through the Vietnam War, through the Civil Rights Movement, through many U.S. missions to space, and sadly, the assassinations of President Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Bobby Kennedy, and Malcolm X. Bewitched survived Green Acres and Hogan's Heroes, and shared a few seasons on the air with The Mary Tyler Moore Show. Bewitched had something special, and because children played an important role in the Stevens household, I think that there's really a tremendous overlooked factor of children and the messaging that went along with this show with regards to handling diversity. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Bewitched starred Elizabeth Montgomery and was produced by Montgomery as well as her husband, William Asher. Montgomery was the daughter of acclaimed film actor Robert Montgomery, and she was, in a sense, then a second-generation Hollywood star who was just a few years older than Liza Minnelli and Candice Bergen. Montgomery was a veteran of stage, TV, and film before Bewitched premiered in 1964. And in a video posted to bio.com, which is an outpost of the biography series, which has been seen on cable forever, she credits the show's 8 years as an incredible training ground that prepared her for the additional hundreds of roles on TV that she played after Bewitched. And as was the case with most sitcoms of the 60s, there are few actors of color throughout the series, and that's where this particular episode, Sisters at Heart, becomes a very important episode. Yet the series, in a sense, even though there weren't people of color, did have an awful lot to do with the acceptance of diversity in a very subtle way, and the lengths to which someone would go to subvert their own identity in order to fit in. In the case of the witch Samantha, she tries each and every day to live as a mortal in her marriage to Darren. And when their children, Tabitha and Adam, are both born with magical powers, the show yielded countless conversations about differences and trying to fit in, and yet trying to be yourself. So think about it. This was quite a stage for progressive plots in the American living room, as programming suitable for a freshly bathed 6-year-old, or 8-year-old, or 10-year-old. But let's think about it. If your audience ranges in the age of 6 to, say, 76, then, it's not surprising that the Bewitched plots of each and every episode were a little less than fully sophisticated. And honestly, who needed a clever plot or tremendously deep meaning when you had a laugh track and Agnes Moorehead as Endora and Bernard Fox as Dr. Bombay? But week in and week out, they did deliver the message that there are differences in this world and people have special powers and people are different from each other, and we shouldn't necessarily judge a book by its cover. In 1969, according to the wisdom of Wikipedia, a young teacher at an almost all African-American high school in Los Angeles took action to learn more about her ninth grade students' reading and comprehension levels. She had already learned through a poetry section that their reading skills were really quite low, and so she had used the storytelling of their favorite TV shows to jumpstart their comprehension and their interest in writing. Now, as it turns out, one of their favorite shows, remember this is 1969, 3 broadcast networks at best, showing into American living rooms. These shows were Julia, which was about an African-American widow raising her son as a single working mother, starring Diane Carroll. Room 222, which actually got discussed in a previous Advanced TV Herstory segment about teachers. And that's a show about a racially diverse high school that co-starred 2 African Americans. And their third favorite was Bewitched. So the teacher contacted all 3 shows in an attempt to illustrate how she was using their shows to increase comprehension. And an important fact that you should know is that she recognized that fewer than half of her students, according to this Wikipedia article, read at a 3rd grade level. And of those 3 shows that were contacted, only Elizabeth Montgomery and William Asher, representing Bewitched, replied to the letter. And I have to note that the Wikipedia page on this episode is quite complete. It's fortified with quotes from noted Elizabeth Montgomery biographer Herbie Paleto. So Montgomery and Asher paid for the class to tour the studio, and the students were so impressed by the experience that they wrote a teleplay that formed the basis of Sisters at Heart.
This is Elizabeth Montgomery. Welcome to Bewitched, next on ABC. Tonight's show was created in the true spirit of Christmas. The story was written by the 10th grade English class at Thomas Jefferson High School in Los Angeles. My friends at Oscar Mayer & Company and I feel it is a very special Bewitched, conceived in the image of innocence and filled with truth.
The work was submitted to Montgomery and Asher without the holiday tie-in, but Barbara Avedon, one of the earliest and most accomplished women TV writers in the business, was assigned to prepare the story for production. Paleto wrote in his 2001 book called Bewitched Forever, the immortal companion to television's most magical, supernatural situation comedy. Here's what he writes, quote, Avedon expressed amazement over the script the students produced. She promised the students no changes would be made to the script unless they approved them. It was because of her recommendation that the story was reformulated as a Christmas episode, end quote. Regular listeners of this podcast will likely recognize the name of Barbara Avedon. She was one of the 2 Barbaras to guide the formation and scripting success of Cagney and Lacey, and in her spare time, she also wrote for the shows Gidget, Maude, Fish, and Love American Style. So in short, here's the story, which I encourage you to view on dailymotion.com. It's the only location online that I have found that contains this entire episode, uninterrupted. Tabitha Stevens, who at this point is maybe 5, give or take, is joined for a few nights visit by Lisa, the daughter of another McMahon and Tate advertising executive. Lisa appears to be about Tabitha's age and is African American. During Lisa's stay with the Stevens family, the girls get bullied at the playground by another girl who professes there's no way Tabitha and Lisa could be sisters because they have different skin colors. This comes to Samantha's attention when the girls are discussing friendship and siblings in the kitchen.
They're all green. I can't stay inside the lines too good.
Too well.
Too well. You color your girl green, too. Then they can be sisters, because they can't be sisters if they're different colors. Okay.
Where'd you get that idea?
The girl in the park, she said that Lisa and me weren't the same color, so we couldn't be sisters. She's a big dope.
That's not nice, Tabitha.
She got me mad. I almost did some magic to her.
Tabitha?
I wasn't going to tell Mommy. Tell what?
Oh, I think Adam is up from his nap. Why don't you come upstairs for a minute and help me?
Now?
Now.
Now, while Lisa's parents are out of town, Darren Stevens is charged with landing the Brockway account. We find out that Mr. Brockway of Brockway Toys is a bit old school and generally seems to have no problem asserting the power of his company over any of the minions or ad executives who want his business.
Hello. Oh, Mr. Brockway, how are you?
Fine.
Good. Yes, I've just put the final touches on the layouts, and forgive the immodesty, but they're great.
Mother always said, don't trust a man who is modest. He knows something. The reason I called you is I'd like to postpone our appointment from 2 until 4 o'clock this afternoon. Is that okay?
Sure. 4 o'clock is fine.
Good. See you at the office, Stevens. Get his address.
We have the office address.
His home address. Mother also said never sign a contract without checking a man's home life. Make sure there are no skeletons rattling around the family closet. I'm ready for my warm milk and cookies now, Miss Hathaway.
Brockway gets to the Stevens home to be greeted at the door by Lisa. Now remember, this plot was developed by a group of 9th grade African Americans, not professional writers. But the episode contains twists and turns you've never seen before.
Hello.
Well, hello there. Oh, my. Aren't you a fine, great big girl? I'll bet your mommy's the housekeeper, right?
What housekeeper?
Your mommy works here. Or is it your papa?
My daddy works for McMahon and Tate, a big advertising company.
Oh, he does?
Mm-hmm. And Tabitha's my sister. We're not the same color, but we're sisters just the same.
Oh. Well, then you must look like your mommy, right?
Split an image, Daddy says. You want to see somebody?
No. I think I've seen enough.
Bye.
Moments later, Lisa rejoins Tabitha, whose nose is still a bit out of joint about the bully who proclaimed that she and Lisa could never be sisters. Tabitha works some magic and applies large spots to her own skin and to Lisa's. So the clock to undo the magic and return the girls to normal starts ticking for Samantha, who has to figure out how to undo the spell before Lisa's parents come to pick her up. There's even more conflict when Brockway tells Larry he's not sure Darren is the right one for the job. Not saying outright, but you understand that his impression is that Darren's marriage is mixed, as they said back in the 60s and 70s. Larry Tate invites Brockway to the company Christmas party, which will suddenly be relocated to the Stevens residence, just so Brockway can see how all-American Samantha and Darren are. Spots on face, Brockway's bias. It's a stronger message than we're used to for a 22-minute sitcom holiday episode. After consulting Dr. Bombay, Samantha gets a grasp on the spot problem.
Hey, you said the polka dots would disappear by this morning.
Well, I have a call into Dr. Bombay. I told him what the problem is.
And the problem is?
Tabitha doesn't want to change back.
Well, you're a bigger witch than she is. Do something.
There's nothing I can do. Her conscious mind wants to obey me, but Tabitha and Lisa want to be sisters so badly that her subconscious mind won't cooperate.
How about getting through to a little old subconscious with a little old-fashioned mortal spanking?
Darren.
An excellent highlight from the episode is this showdown that takes place at the Christmas party led by none other than Larry Tate. He shows himself to be a progressive manager and business owner when he comes to learn that the source of Brockway's apprehension about Darren, the reason why Brockway didn't want Darren to land the account, is his belief that Darren is married to Dorothy Wilson, Lisa's mother. So Larry tells Brockway that McMahon and Tate doesn't want him as a client. Darren asks Samantha to intercede. This is going off the rails here, and they'd really like to land the Brockway account. But if Samantha can do something to teach Brockway a lesson in a way that doesn't include Larry calling him a name, so Samantha does it, and Brockway leaves, but basically Larry is still kind of sending him out the door as quickly as he can. And upstairs, with her house continuing to fill with guests, Samantha spends a little bit more time with the girls,
Sam.
just in time.
Keith and Dorothy just arrived, and Dorothy's on her way up here.
Mommy and Daddy are here?
Yeah, so we better hurry.
But if you take away the dots, we won't be sisters anymore.
Tabitha, you can be sisters without looking alike.
But that girl in the park said that Lisa and me can't be sisters because I'm white and she's black. That's right, Mrs. Stevens. That's what she said.
Well, she was wrong. Sisters are girls who share something. Usually the same parents, but if you share other things, good feelings, friendship, love, the way you two do, well, that makes you sisters in another way. Actually, all men are brothers, even if they're girls.
Well, I guess Mama would be kind of upset to see the polka dot.
Kind of. I think they're ready now. Okay, Tabitha.
Okay, Mommy. But remember, we'll still be sisters and you'll come visit. All the time. This is better than Disneyland.
So you think everything turned out for the best, right? Tabitha and Lisa have bonded as lifelong sisters. The spots are gone, her parents are none the wiser, and Larry Tate earned the Best Boss Award for standing up to Brockway. But that's not the case, as there was this little hangover from Samantha's spell from the night before. So Brockway shows up at the Stevens residence on Christmas Day.
I should have called before I came over, but I was afraid you'd say no. I had a very sleepless night last night, and, well, I just had to come over.
Come in.
Thank you. Oh, I don't want to intrude.
Come in. Well, everybody, look who's here.
Merry Christmas. Mr. Brockway, Merry Christmas.
Tabitha, why don't you and Lisa take Adam upstairs? You can play up there for a while, okay? Come on, sweetheart, you can take your blocks. Go on. Go on.
I told Mrs. Stevens I didn't want to intrude, but I've got something I'd like to say to all of you. A peculiar thing happened to me here last night. The equivalent of 20 years on the psychiatrist's couch. I discovered something about myself. I found out I'm a racist.
A racist?
Oh, not the obvious out-in-the-open type of racist. Not me, no. I was a sneaky racist. I was so sneaky I didn't even know it myself.
A very smart man said, to adequately define the problem is the first step toward solving it.
Well, I've defined it. And I'd like to apologize for that other thing, that misunderstanding.
There's really no apology necessary.
Thank you. Well, I guess I'll be going.
Before dinner?
What?
Mr. Brockway, you are invited to stay for Christmas dinner.
Thank you, Mrs. Stevens. I'd like that very much. Stevens, I wish I could talk you into coming back on my account.
This is Christmas, Mr. Brockway. Business can wait.
I'll tell you, Mr. Brockway, a lot depends on how you do at dinner.
Huh?
We're having integrated turkey, white meat and dark.
Wow. Talk about self-awareness coming from the mouth of a middle-aged white male character. Now, on a different night, you might see Archie Bunker being the exact polar opposite. So in all of his books about Elizabeth Montgomery, author Herbie Paleto quotes her as saying that this episode, Sisters at Heart, was her favorite one of the whole series. Maybe this podcast segment and this one episode of Bewitched will cause you to look at the series in a whole new light. What other subtle messages did Montgomery and her husband, William Asher, embed in the plots that were soaked up by American kids of all backgrounds? Is the legacy really, in fact, one of acceptance and understanding diversity and seeing it through the eyes of children? I'm thrilled and not a bit surprised that the power couple assigned Barbara Avedon to work the script so it would be ready for production. I wonder whether the teacher, who wrote to a handful of popular shows only to be answered by the Bewitched people, is she still alive? She'd be about 70 today. What other ways did she use TV storytelling to engage her students? If you've got 22 minutes, go to dailymotion.com and watch the episode Sisters at Heart. Jot me a note at advancedtvherstory, all one word, @gmail.com if you thought it was the best holiday episode you've ever seen. Or, even if after viewing it, you too think that the little girl's clothing and this one wrap dress with geometric pattern that Samantha wears to the party, that they're pretty much the most excellent apparel you've seen all day. And Elizabeth Taylor's hair, which is simply profound, deserves comment by anybody who wants to spend the time jotting me a line. Take your thoughts public by leaving a review at our Libsyn hosting site or iTunes. Follow the podcast on Twitter. Our handle is TV Herstory. A final note about the two women mentioned frequently in this installment. We lost Elizabeth Montgomery to colon cancer when she was just 62 years old in 1995. Her career was illustrious, and she was nominated for a number of Emmys for Bewitched and other television movie roles, but she never won one. And in 1995, she was posthumously awarded the Women in Film Crystal and Lucy Award, but she never put an Emmy trophy on her mantle. Barbara Avedon was a television writer who was most well known for her collaborative work on Cagney and Lacey. She passed away at the age of 69 in 1994. In all, we lost two fine, talented ladies far too soon. I bet they had some great stories to tell and lessons to share. Sending out a big thank you to David Brown for his audio production work on this installment, and more importantly, sending out a big thank you to all the listeners of Advanced TV Herstory for your continued support, your downloads, your referrals, your recommendations, your notes. With every installment, I have a blast and I learn a lot, and I hope you do too. I'm your host, Cynthia Bemis Abrams. Thanks for listening.